A Day in Faralor 2, The Ancient Dragon and the Descendants. By Ryan Baker. The date is June 28, 3000. The location is the land of Waltakar. There is a town on the land of Waltakar. It is in the dimension of Faralor. The dragon Zarordoz the Ancient is at his place. He was sitting on the highest perch in the immediate area around the cave. So, said Zarordoz, summer is here. Zarordoz was looking around the area. At that moment, Zarordoz sees 8 people in the area. They are Arthur Rayner, Brock Briggs, Focal Rockclaw, Corpalox, Allison Creighton, Ilaria Starwind, Luke Jackson, and Kelly Clorax. Hey guys, said Focal Rockclaw, I see him now. I begin to see what you're talking about, said Brock Briggs. At that moment, the 8 friends head over to the cave of Zarordoz. Moments later, they arrive at the location of Zarordoz. So, said Zarordoz, it seems that I have some visitors. Greetings, said Arthur Rayner, I am Arthur Rayner. This is Brock Briggs, Focal Rockclaw, Corpalox, Allison Creighton, Ilaria Starwind, Luke Jackson, and Kelly Clorax. I am Zarordoz, the Ancient, said Zarordoz, I'm sure that you have heard of me. Yes, said Arthur Rayner, my grandfather told me about you. In fact, he had an old photo of an old relative of mine. A relative of yours, said Zarordoz. Yes, said Arthur Rayner, my ancestor was Davis Rayner. Davis Rayner, said Zarordoz, I never thought that I would hear that name again. Yes, said Arthur Rayner, my grandfather told me that Davis Rayner, my ancestor, used to visit here with his friends. Oh yes, said Zarordoz, now I remember. I used to tell them tales that I have heard about throughout my life. That is rather interesting, said Arthur Rayner. In fact, said Brock Briggs, that is the main reason why we are here. Is that so? Said Zarordoz. Yes, said Brock Briggs. In that case, said Zarordoz, I shall tell tales. This should be interesting, said Focal Rockclaw. This first tale is known as The Day the Drifter Came to Town. Said Zarordoz. Interesting, said Focal Rockclaw. Do you mind? Said Ilaria Starwind. The end of Part 1. Story 1, The Day the Drifter Came to Town. The date is August 12, 1880. The location is the town of Startle. Startle is a town on the planet of Prometheria. There is a person traveling across the planet. It is Grant Welker. Grant Welker was making his way to the town of Startle. Startle is a small town. While Startle is a small town, it is well maintained. There are human residents in the town. There are also robot and humanoid life forms whom reside in the town. At that moment, Grant Welker arrives at the town. The first place Grant went to was the saloon. He steps up to the table. The saloon owner sees him. So, said the saloon owner, what shall you have, stranger? A glass of your finest beer, said Grant. Coming right up, said the saloon owner. The saloon owner goes to the wall behind the table. He gets a bottle of beer. He also gets a glass. He pours the beer into the glass. Grant pays for the drink. At that moment, a guy runs into the saloon. The guy was all out of breath. The saloon owner sees the guy. What's the matter? Asked the saloon owner. Arthur James is coming here, said the guy. Arthur James? Said the saloon owner. Who is this Arthur James? Asked Grant Welker. He is the younger brother of Johnny James, leader of the Jollark gang of outlaws, said the saloon owner. Jollark gang? Said Grant. Yes, said the saloon owner, they're a gang of outlaws. They are notoriously ruthless. Yeah, said the guy, they've been terrorizing the townsfolk. Not only that, but they had tried to take over all of the prospecting claims and the gold mines. My uncle lost his gold mine. This is serious, said Grant. Now that's an understatement, said the saloon owner. Yeah, said the guy. I helped my uncle build the entire place. That gold mine served as his only source of income. Why hasn't the sheriff done anything about the matter? Asked Grant. There's the problem, said the saloon owner. What are you talking about? Asked Grant. The previous sheriff was killed. Everyone's scared to fill the role of sheriff. Someone has to do something about the matter, said Grant. He does have a point, said the guy. We can't just go about our lives in fear of the Zarordoz gang and their reign of terror. In that case, said the saloon owner, I suggest you see the mayor. He will give you the sheriff's badge and make it official. Understood, said Grant. At that moment, Grant heads over to the mayor's office. When Grant arrives at the mayor's office, he could see the mayor and the undertaker. The undertaker was dressed in all black. He looked rather pale and grim. Grant approaches the mayor and the undertaker. So, said the mayor, welcome to our humble little town of Startle. How may I help you? I'm here for the post of sheriff, said Grant. I have heard that the position is currently vacant. So, said the undertaker, it looks like I have another casket to build. I'd better get my measuring tape and tools. Now hold on a second, said the mayor. What is it? Asked the undertaker. I have a good feeling about this guy, said the mayor, so, before you get carried away, at least give him a chance. What do you mean? Asked the undertaker. He's only a drifter. What can he possibly do to help us? Something tells me that he can handle this himself, said the mayor. If you insist, said the undertaker. That was where the mayor proceeds to go into the town hall. He gets the sheriff's badge. He also gets the 6-shooter and its holster. He comes out of the town hall. He gives the sheriff's badge, the 6-shooter, and the holster to Grant Welker. With these items, said the mayor, you are now hereby officially the town's sheriff. Thank you, sir, said Grant. I will not fail you. Hopefully not, said the mayor. I'm sure that I don't have to tell you what happened to the other sheriffs whom served before you. The mayor motions towards the nearby graveyard. Grant could see that there was a large amount of graves. There were 30 graves which belonged to the previous sheriffs. This should be interesting, said Grant. At that moment, they could hear the sound of the hooves of a horse. It was the horse of Arthur James. Arthur James arrives at the town. Arthur James takes out a megaphone. He starts calling out to the mayor and the townspeople. I am Arthur James, said Arthur James, brother of Johnny James, leader of the Zarordoz gang. I am here for the daily tribute. I don't want any trouble. Daily tribute? Said Grant. Yes, said the mayor. Johnny sends his brother to gather the daily tribute of $2,000. $2,000? Said Grant. How long has this been going on? It's been going on for the last couple of years, said the mayor. The last couple of years? Said Grant. How in the ancient worlds did this town even survive through all this extortion? Well, said the mayor, we did manage to get the payment via the gold mine for the first couple of months. Yes, said the undertaker, it had only recently started getting worse for us. That was because they started taking over the gold mines. We are starting to get low on funds. Yes, said the mayor, in fact, our population had started to dwindle. This is serious, said Grant. I shall see what I can do. Thank you, said the mayor. Grant goes to confront Arthur James. Arthur James sees Grant. Well, said Arthur James, what do we have here? It looks like we have new sheriff on our hands. Yes, said Grant Welker, I am the new sheriff. I intend to stop your reign of terror. At that moment, Arthur James starts laughing. You think you can win this fight? Said Arthur James. Of course, said Grant. In that case, said Arthur, we shall handle this with a duel. At that moment, Arthur climbs off his horse. Grant puts the holster on. All right, said Arthur, we'll do this the proper way. The proper way, said Grant. Yes, said Arthur, I may be evil, but even I have standards. The pair had walked over to the main street. They assume the positions for the shootout. They wait for the clock to strike 12 noon. Moments later, the clock strikes 12 noon. Both Arthur and Grant go for their guns. Grant was just slightly quicker than Arthur. Grant scores a direct hit. The hit proves to be fatal. Arthur had died as a result. So, said Grant, that was easy. The Undertaker and the mayor witnessed the outcome of the shootout. That was interesting, said the mayor. Yes, said the Undertaker, here I thought I was going to have to build a casket for the sheriff. Yes, said the mayor, from the looks of it, we may be able to actually overthrow the Jollert gang. The mayor and the Undertaker go over to congratulate Grant on the victory. The town's doctor also goes over to the main street. He performs a medical check on the body of Arthur James. What's the status, Doc? Asked the mayor. He is most certainly dead, said the doctor. This is interesting, said Grant. This obviously means that you have one, said the mayor. I have one? Said Grant. Yes, said the mayor. The four have no idea that there is a person watching the events from a distance. He takes out a telescope. He was watching the entire events. The person immediately reports back to Johnny James. Johnny James starts making more plans. Grant has no idea that he will be facing Johnny Jones. Grant Welker accepts his role as the sheriff of the town. He has no idea what will happen next. The end of Tale 1. Part 2 of Main Story. Zarordoz had just told the 8 friends the tale of Grant Welker, the drifter turned sheriff. This is rather interesting, said Brock Briggs. Yes, said Kelly Clorax. Is that what you 8 think about the tale? Asked Zarordoz. Yes, said Allison Creighton. Do you have any questions about the tale? Asked Zarordoz. How did they manage to get the money for the tribute? Asked Ilarius Starwind. There were several sources of gold for the town, said Zarordoz. They also had gotten some gold from neighboring towns. That is rather interesting, said Arthur Rayner. Yes, said Corpalox. Do you know of any other tales? As a matter of fact, said Zarordoz, I do know of other tales. What kinds of tales? Asked Luke Jackson. I know of one particular tale, said Zarordoz. It is about a crew of a small delivery ship. That is about a day in their life, when they find a ship inhabited by the undead. What is it called? Asked Luke Jackson. It is called the Ship of the Undead. Said Zarordoz. The end of Part 2. Tale 2, The Ship of the Undead. The date is July 30th, 2600. The location is the Euraxia Galaxy. There is a delivery ship traveling through the galaxy. The delivery ship is called the Mercury. The ship's captain is Arthur Hickey. Captain Hickey is at the bridge of the ship. He was there with the navigator. The navigator is named Conrad Lee. What's the status? Asked Captain Hickey. We're on course for our destination, said Conrad Lee. At that moment, the navigator notices something on the controls. There was a blip on the long-range sensors. That's odd, said Conrad Lee. What is it? Asked Captain Hickey. There seems to be some sort of blip on the long-range sensors, said Conrad Lee. Shall we go to see what it is? We're way ahead of schedule, said Captain Hickey. We shall go to the location. Understood, said Conrad Lee. At that moment, Conrad Lee punches in the coordinates for the source of the blip. The crew head towards the source of the blip. Moments later, the crew arrives at the location of the blip. They see the source of the blip. It is a spaceship. This is interesting, said Captain Hickey. What shall we do now? Asked Conrad Lee. From the looks of it, said Captain Hickey, it's in good shape. We should send a small recon party in to check out the interior. Good idea, said Conrad Lee. Conrad Lee gets on the comlink. He calls up the rest of the crew. There were 10 other members of the crew. All right, guys, said Captain Hickey, we have a ship. It's in good shape. As Captain Hickey was talking, Clayton Simpson, the communications officer, attempts to hail the ship on the COM0 link frequency. I'm not getting any response from the ship, said Clayton Simpson. That can't be good, said Captain Hickey. Captain Hickey turns to the crew. It looks like we might have some inured on the ship. It might also have some technical problems, so I want you guys to be on your toes in this situation. Which of you guys wants to go on this mission? Said Captain Hickey. 3 members of the crew stepped forward. We'll join this mission, said Andreas Jones. Yeah, said Carlos Fernandez. I shall join on this mission, said Hector Stone. All right then, said Captain Hickey, head over to the docking bay. But before you go, you guys better suit up, just in case. Good idea, said Carlos. At that moment, Carlos, Andreas, and Hector head to the storage lockers to get the suits. The suits have hazmat protection, as well as rebreathers, protection against contaminants, and biological agents. The helmets on the suits include a built-in light. They also pick up the relevant gear for a mission. The trio head over to the docking bay. Captain Hickey contacts the trio over the ship's comm link. Are you guys ready? Asked Captain Hickey. We're here, said Andreas. We're ready, said Carlos. That's good to hear, said Captain Hickey. Carlos Lee maneuvers the ship closer to the other ship. Conrad Lee aligns both ships so that the docking bay tube can be engaged. Conrad Lee activates the docking bay tube. Captain Hickey gets on the comm link. The docking bay tube is in position. Said Captain Hickey, you may now proceed with the mission. Understood, said Andreas. The trio enter the tube. They head to the other end of the tube. Before they entered the ship, they put on their helmets. The trio enter the ship. All right, guys, said Andreas, turn on your radios and headlights. Understood, Carlos and Hector said. The trio turn on their radios and headlights. Let's get this mission started, said Andreas. Understood, said Carlos and Hector. The trio goes in separate ways on the ship. They start searching the ship. Moments have passed, and the trio didn't find anything. I don't see any life on board, said Carlos. What do you guys see on your end? I'm nearing the bridge as we speak, said Andreas. I don't see any signs either. Andreas arrives at the entrance to the bridge. He notices that the controls for the door still has power. That's strange, said Andreas. The door's control panel still has power. Andreas gets on the radios. What do you guys see on your ends? Asked Andreas. I'm nearing the crew quarters, said Carlo. I'm not picking up any life signs. Although, I do see that the place is still getting power from the engine room. That's what I was thinking, said Hector. I'm at the galley. I notice that the galley still has power. At that moment, Andreas opens the door to the bridge. Andreas enters the bridge. He starts looking around the bridge. He also activates the helmet's built-in camera. He starts recording the events. Andreas notices the captain's chair. He sees that the captain's chair is occupied by a corpse. By the ancient worlds, said Andreas. What is it? Asked Carlos. The captain of this ship is dead, said Andreas. Dead, said Carlos. Are you sure? Yes, said Andreas. Andreas approaches the corpse. He attempts to take a pulse on the corpse, Andreas doesn't get a pulse on the corpse. He is most certainly dead, said Andreas. At that moment, the corpse of the captain started to move. This can't be good, said Andreas. He contacts the other members of the team. He informs them of the situation. I see the dead moving about on their own as well, said Carlos. It seems that the crew had been turned into the undead through some sort of strange means. Yeah, said Hector, I see some undead in the galley as well. We'd better get to a safe place, said Andreas. Good idea, said Carlos. The team head down to the engine room. The trio arrive at the engine room. There doesn't seem to be any undead here, said Carlos. Yes, said Hector. We'd better contact the guys back on the ship, said Andreas. Good idea, said Carlos. At that moment, Captain Hickey contacts the trio. Andreas tells Captain Hickey about the situation. You guys had better head back to the ship, said Captain Hickey. Understood, said Andreas. You heard the captain. Let's get back to the ship. Understood, said Carlos and Hector. The trio started on their way back to the docking bay tubes. They see that the undead were closing in on them. The trio started to run towards the docking bay doors. The undead started to chase after them. The trio had started to run faster. The trio managed to get to the docking bay. They open the door. They enter the tube. They narrowly avoided getting infected by the undead. The trio make it back onto the ship. They head to the bridge. Conrad Lee disengages the docking bay tube from the other ship. So, said Captain Hickey, you guys said that you found some undead on the ship. Yes, said Andreas. What shall we do now? Not to worry, said Captain Hickey. I have everything under control. I've contacted the proper authorities. They'll handle the matter. That's rather fortunate, said Andreas. Now let's get out of here, said Captain Hickey. We still have a delivery to complete. Understood, sir, said Andreas. The crew of the Mercury head for the destination. They have no idea what will be happening next. The ship that contains the undead will be cleared of its inhabitants. The end of Tale 2. Part 3 of Main Story. Zarordoz had just told the 8 friends the tale of the delivery crew and the ship of the undead. What did you think of the tale? Asked Zarordoz. That was rather interesting, said Brock Briggs. What other tales do you know? Asked Alison Creighton. I know of another tale, said Zarordoz. It is about a barbarian warrior whom starts out on a quest to avenge his dead brother. What is it called? Asked Luke Jackson. It is called The Barbarian and the Quest for Revenge. Said Zarordoz. That is rather interesting, said Luke Jackson. The end of Part 3. Tale 3, The Barbarian and the Quest for Revenge. The date is June 10th, 10,000 BC. The location is the northern land of Torlux. The northern lands of Torlux is in the dimension of Octiviox. It was an average day in the tribal land in the continent of Torlux. Garos Wolfare Gromskull, a barbarian warrior, is at the tribal lands. He is talking to Gortrox Ironwolf, a blacksmith. Have you heard from your brother yet? Asked Gortrox. I haven't yet, said Garos. He has yet to return from his hunting trip. At that moment, Tarkular Hammershield, a friend of Ramos Volar Gromskull, enters the town. He was heavily injured. Garos and Gortrox notice him. Tarkular Hammershield, said Garos, you're back from the hunting trip with my brother. Where's my brother? We were attacked during our hunting trip, said Tarkular. Who attacked you? Asked Garos. We were attacked by some mysterious creatures. They wore some sort of strange armor. They took your brother somewhere. I must do something, said Garos. Garos goes over to get his horse. Don't go and do anything rash, Garos, said Gortrox. I must do something, said Garros, my brother's in trouble. If you insist, said Gortrox, just be careful. Understood, said Garros. Garros gets his axe. He also gets the saddle. He puts the saddle onto his horse. He gets onto the horse. Where was the team when they were attacked? Asked Garros. They were located about 10 kilometers to the west of here, said Tarkular. Understood, said Garros, thanks for the info. Garros heads in the direction of the last known whereabouts of the hunting party. A couple of hours have passed. Garros had arrived at the location of the last known whereabouts of the hunting party. He looked around the area. He could see the signs of battle. So, said Garros. Tarkular was right about the situation. At that moment, a falcon arrives in the area. It was carrying a crystal. The falcon lands in front of Garros. So, said Garros, a falcon has arrived. Garros picks up the crystal. At that moment, the crystal had started to project an image. The being is that of the Crypt King. He is in his underground crypt. He is currently accompanied by several of the same armored creatures that attacked the hunting party. Ramos is there as well. Welcome, said the Crypt King, I have your brother, Garros. By the gods, said Garros. At that moment, the Crypt King slits the throat of Ramos Bowler Gromskull. I can't believe this, said Garros, you shall pay for what you did. You'll have to confront me if you want to avenge your brother, said the Crypt King. The Crypt King started to laugh maniacally. Ramos Bowler Gromskull, said Garros, I shall avenge you. Garros starts on his quest to avenge his brother. He has no idea how long it will take to complete his mission. He has no idea what will happen next. The end of Tale 3. Part 4 of Main Story. Zarordoz had just told the 8 friends the tale of the barbarian warrior and the quest for revenge. What did you guys think of the tale? Asked Zarordoz. That is rather interesting, said Brock Briggs. Do any of you have any questions about the tales? Asked Zarordoz. We don't have any questions, said Foko Rockclaw. At that moment, Brock Briggs checks his watch. We must get back home, said Brock Briggs. That's right, said Kelly Clorax, my family's about to go on a road trip. I have to go back home to prepare. In that case, said Zarordoz, I shall let you guys go. Understood, said Brock Briggs. The 8 friends leave the cave. They go back to their homes. They go about their business. Zarordoz returns back to his cave. He has no idea what will happen next. The end.